Hello again. This is the second and probably the final part of my e-bike project, sort of an SUV e-bike, I guess you could say. So I'll have a look at what has actually changed or been changed on the bike. I might start at the back here. And we might start actually with the thing I found. One of the most annoying things to get right was the kickstand. So apparently bikes that use a similar frame to this one in the KTM series, they all have a Hebe, which is a German kickstand. So this kickstand here is called a Hebe eFix 40 because of the 40mm bolt centers that we've got here. And it's an unusual kickstand in that it doesn't actually stay down here. As soon as you let it go, it flies back. When the bike's on the ground, that's fine, and it does work quite well. So the idea is that you don't have to actually kick it back. When you lift the bike off the ground vertically, the stand just flies back on its own and you can ride away. So that's pretty good. But I've tried some other, because this stand of course had to come from Germany. It took quite a while to get it. I tried a couple of other cheaper stands, other brands of stands. Nothing would fit and nothing worked properly. So if you're going to go to the trouble of getting a stand, don't bother trying to fit anything else apart from one of these Hebe stands, because the bike, the frame has got a little inset in there. It's a bit hard to see it, but there's a little sort of an indent in the chainstay there for this particular stand. So the bike is designed for this Hebe stand, and it's really hard to find anything else that fits. So that was the main issue. Everything else sort of went pretty well actually. We've put a rack on the back, and I've already got a Toe Peak DX trunk bag, so I just wanted to use another Toe Peak rack, which I did, and by using one of these clever little seat post clamps that have got the connections there, put the rack to. That all went pretty easily. And just if you're getting one of these, you don't want the disc brake one, you just want the plain one. The disc brake one actually isn't designed for these new type of inline disc brakes that are sort of set into the frame more than the older versions of the disc brakes. So yeah, just a standard Toe Peak rack, as you can see. It sort of fits reasonably well on the bike. It's got enough clearance from the seat so that your backside isn't rubbing on the trunk bag, so that works well. And I put on some lights on the bike, so they're sort of wide in lights. These are this is a lupine, just try and get it in focus, a lupine called a C14. It's a rack mount one. You can also get one that mounts on the post, but this is a rack mount. And the other main thing on the back here of course is the mud guards, or fenders as they like to call them in the States, but these are difficult to get to because the wheels are fairly wide. We'll get to the tyres that I've changed in a minute, but these are called Blumels from SKS. That's sort of the brand there, SKS. And they're quite a clever product because they're plastic, but they're quite rigid in that they've got an aluminium sort of layer in between the two layers of plastic on the outside, with the aluminium in the middle, so they're relatively stiff. I did have to make a customized sort of bracket there here to fix it here, but this particular version of these Blumels, they're called the 75mm wide series. This is the long series, which goes right down so you can fix it into the frame there. They also make a short one for full suspension bikes that finishes up sort of about here somewhere, which is probably not, you know, would vibrate at this point, I imagine. So I did change the mounting point so it lined up with this post a little better. This one had to be sort of where it was, but the original mounting point sort of just see it in there, is about there, which meant the wire would have been here, so I've just moved that forward a bit. And you can't really see that it's been moved, but it just looks a little neater behind the post of the rack there. The tyres I've changed. I've taken off those big Schwalbe knobby nicks and put on some Hurricanes. And you can see the tread pattern on these. There's a little sort of, a bit more road, a little bit off-road. It's got the lugs on the outside, and having ridden it quite a bit in some muddy areas where I've had to actually go off trails because of all the trees that are blown down here in Melbourne, these actually work quite well on the mud, give you a reasonably good grip. The lugs start to dig in when you get into the mud, and when you go back onto the hard stuff, the more slick centre goes along quite quietly and quite quickly. So they work quite well. They've also got that reflective strip, so you can get rid of those ugly reflectors that the bike shops always put on bikes when they come into Australia. So that's what we've sort of done on the back of the bike. Everything else is pretty much just as it was. I've changed the seat. This is an ergon seat. What's it called? It's called an ergon Core Prime or something like that. So this is a slightly, well, probably a much better seat, much more comfortable than the one that we had. We did cut a bit off the seat post, because when the seat post was close to down, which is pretty much where I ride, this is called a medium size frame. So where I ride it, this seat post was, when it was down, it was hitting this lug inside the frame. So I was a bit concerned that it might damage something if it did accidentally slide down and bash on this lug. So I cut sort of 50mm off it, but you can see 50mm off is not really a great deal. It's still got piles in the frame, so that was okay. What else have we changed? We changed the pedals, so those crappy cheap pedals, we've now got some, these are actually BMX pedals, because I just like to use the old traditional toe clip. And these are made by MKS, and they're fully serviceable. This bearing cap here can come off, and you can pull these apart and service the bearings if you need to. The other good thing with these is the amount of friction, as you can see, is practically zero compared with the other pedals that were on it. So yeah, zero riding friction there with the better quality pedals. Coming up to the front, we might just talk about this front fender, the SKS Blue Mel, because this was a bit of a problem, this one, because even though the back one worked perfectly with all of the location points, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4 location points. The front one really only locates here on the fork, and then one down the bottom as standard. And what I found when riding is that this section in here used to flex, creating this horrible vibration on the front. So I tried a few different things, as you can see with the holes in the front. I tried a few different things trying to fix the vibration on the front. Nothing seemed to work. So in the end, I tried to fashion something in here. So cut a long story short, I bought a cheaper set, because the short series of these, as I mentioned before, you can get a short series that comes to about here. They're about sort of almost half the price of this longer series. So I just bought a short series, and I scavenged the stay and this sort of 2-bar bracket, 2-stay bracket to go onto the fork, and cut this in here neatly, put it back on the bike, and voila, no more vibration, because this section here can no longer vibrate, can no longer flex, which means this bit here doesn't vibrate anymore. Yeah, so it's a bit of an issue with these ones I've found, but we fixed it, and that's the main thing. So it just cost a fair bit more than it was supposed to. Anyway, we'll move up to the front of the bike. What we've changed here is we've changed the grips. These are now an ergon grip. I think they're called the GP1, and these are much more comfortable than the crummy grips that they had on there. And also to give you a nice place for your palm to rest there. And we put a decent bell on, because the bell, of course, was just some cheap junk thing. This is called a Spur Cycle Original, and it's quite a nice bell. And yeah, people actually do hear that one, as opposed to the junky ones that they tend to put on bikes these days. And also we've changed the cockpit. We've now got the kiosk, and Just try and turn it on there. And to make the kiosk look nice and tidy, the way it is here, I've also changed the stem. So this is actually a KTX stem. You can quite read it there. KTM do make this stem for a lot of their other bikes, although it's not easily found, but I managed to source one from a place overseas. And as you can see, it's quite a neat solution. A lot of the other mounts that mount up, the thing sort of just sits above, high above the handlebars here, and are easily knocked off. With this one, it's relatively flush with the bar. It's nice and neat from the side as well. As you can see, it sits down quite well. And what I also do is when I'm riding, I put there's a little loophole just here where I put a lanyard which can then wrap around the stem. And because this is mounted on magnets, if I can take this off, as you can see there, mounted on magnets, if you go over any really rough stuff, potentially it can bounce out of the magnets, although the magnets are pretty strong. So by using a little lanyard in this lanyard loop and sticking it around the stem, if it does bounce out, well, it's not going to go very far. The kiosk has got Gorilla Glass, so the glass is fairly tough. It can sync up via Bluetooth to your phone, and there's plenty of stuff online about the Bosch kiosks. It seems to be a bit of an upgrade from the one that was on it, which is the Intuvia. The only thing I had to do with the stem was take the two spacers out. Now, I know there's lots of junk on the internet about whether you should have a spacer between the stem and the top bearing cap here. This is a pretty thick aluminium cap. Doesn't seem to make any difference to the performance of the stem or the bearings, and it gets the bars back down to the height that I needed. So there's the controller here for the kiosks. As you can see, the front hoses are a little bit neater now, and probably the only other thing we've changed here is, or added something, not really changed it, is the headlight, which is one of these Lupine SLX lights. Now these lights, the front and rear light, plug directly into the motor, and so if you're buying the Lupine lights, they're difficult to find in Australia, but if you're buying them from overseas, probably from Germany or somewhere, you need to make sure that you nominate which motor you've got. They come for the Bros motor and the Yamaha motor, and of course the Bosch, but which particular series and whatnot, you need to be fairly sure about all of that before you go ahead and order that. Yeah, so the only other changes, I guess, obviously we've cut a little bit, and we've got the remnants over here. We've cut a bit off the seat post, about 50mm. I had to cut 20mm off the head stem, and also I've cut about 20 or 25mm off the handlebars, because I think I mentioned in the first video that the handlebars seemed to be a little bit wide. They're 720mm, which seemed a bit too wide for me, so down to about sort of 670 something now, so that seems about right. So that's it. It's quite a nice bike to ride now. It's quite fast and much quieter with the slicker tyres than the Nobby Nix tyres, and it's pretty close now specification wise. Got some lights, got a rack, got some slightly narrower tyres too. I probably didn't mention that these ones are a little bit narrower. I think these are 57mm wide as compared with the 60mm wide Nobby Nix tyres, and that's about as narrow as you can go on the 30mm rim. They don't recommend you go much narrower than that on a 30mm wide rim, so that's sort of what we've stuck with there, and they seem to perform really well. We've had the bike up to about 45 kilometres now down steep hills, and yeah, stable and rides really nicely. So that's it. If there's any questions, you can always drop us a line. See you next time. Bye now.